Okay, let's get Misty in on this for the first time. So again, it's almost $355 million. The two Trump's sons, Don Jr. and Eric, barred from being officers of businesses in New York for 3 years. Misty, your reaction in terms of what you expected and what we're now seeing from the civil court in New York?
Well, now we're seeing this huge number, which is what the Attorney General had asked for. And funny enough, the number had been broken down. About 180 million of that relates directly to what they say the Trump organization gained from these fraudulent applications and fraudulent transactions. So that's going to be a central part of the appeal. Where does the rest of the money come from, right? So that's part of this award. The other piece of this, the two officers are barred. Remember, the judge had canceled the Trump organization's business certificates during the summary judgment ruling, but put that on hold pending the final decision. So that's another big piece of this. Where does that fall as far as the Trump organization? Do they have to dissolve? What limitations are imposed on them moving forward, not just the officers?
How long would something like this take to play out, though? Because then we go into appeals and all the rest of it. So this is not like this is happening, next week. This is going to take a while before there's any kind of conclusion or we know what's happening with Trump's business in New York. Is that fair? Or?
Right, because the whole idea is that there would be a stay, and as Bernard has said, the analysis is, would there be irreparable harm if this were to move forward while the appellate process was still playing out? And arguably, yes, there would be a great deal of harm if the businesses were dissolved or not allowed to move forward, or this money had to be paid right now. So that appellate process is going to go forward. An essential part of that appellate decision will be, was summary judgment. Remember, this was a lot about the money. The central claim was determined. It was not part of the trial. It was determined before the trial began.
Right.
And so the central part will be, should that have been a fact-finding analysis, or was that so dispositive that Donald Trump did not get to impose a defense to that? So a lot of novel appellate issues here.
So just reading the summary from the Reuters Newswire, it's just about $355 million, $354.9 million in penalties. Again, for fraudulently overstating his net worth. And for people who have been following this case from the beginning, the whole idea was, that Trump and officials with this company come on and said that their properties and his own net worth was much more than it was, exaggerating that for the purpose of maybe getting a better deal with a lender and getting better deals with, people they were dealing with in business. And to Misty's point, that decision was already made. We wanted to know what the penalties would be, and the other penalties, not only Don Jr. and Eric, but I believe former President Donald Trump himself, the way it's phrased here, are barred from being officers of businesses in New York State for 3 years. How do you define, by the way, Misty, I'll go to Bernard in a moment, officers of a business? Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So defining officers of business, that's a term of art in New York. It means they can't be on any certificates of incorporation.
Okay.
They can't serve on any boards. They can't be in any C-suites. They're not permitted to be the decision makers in a business in New York State. That is a huge blow to the Trump organization. In fact, this decision, some have called it, the death blow to the Trump organization based on that. But again, we'll be pausing that through the appellate process.
And it's not technically that, right? So that, which is also significant in and of itself, Bernard, to some degree, is that there could have been, or there was some, I believe in the previous ruling, they would say that you would have dissolved his companies. But this is not dissolving the companies, it's imposing a penalty. So I'm not sure if that's, a little bit less than what the worst case scenario would have been. But pick up on that, Bernardo.
But I think still that amount of money having to be paid, I think it still dissolves the company in the sense of you're going to have to sell your business. You're going to have to liquidate in order to pay these amounts. And that is if the appeal is upheld, if that decision is upheld by the appellate court. But aside from that, on a different note, if you are saying that the sons are not going to be able to hold any office, not be able to be on any boards, remember that officers of businesses, you're also taking money away from them, because officers on these business boards, they do make a lot more money than the other people that are part of the organization. So you're dealing two blows to them.
How does it affect? So the one of the questions, not as much of a legal question, but Misty, I know you've been following this for years, really now. But this whole idea of this much money needed to be raised, vis-a-vis how much net worth Donald Trump, or how much Donald Trump is worth, which is debatable to some extent.
Right.
It's always been a question mark, and how much of that that he has is liquid because a lot of it's in real estate. So this would be tough to come up with this much liquidity. I know I mentioned earlier, remember that testimony he had some time ago? He said it 400 million liquid. A lot of people thought that wasn't necessarily the case.
Yes, and that's actually very interesting. And you'll notice that all of these trials, including E. Jean Carroll, and in this trial, there are questions posed to Donald Trump about his net worth. Why do you think that is? What they have that's liquid? Because all of that speaks to these damages phases of these civil trials. Right. He's gotten on the stand and under oath talked about his liquidity, so it takes away from any argument that they simply don't have the funds to pay. So that all plays together in these cases.
Be careful what you exaggerate. It can come back to bite you in certain situations. But Arda, stay there. Misty as well.